Okay, so in root beer, we first start out with our for loop. So again, we know that we have to start out with some starting number. And luckily, hopefully, you've heard of 99 bottles of root beer on the wall, or at least some type of rendition of that. So we know our starting number should probably be 99. So when we have our for loop, and we're repeating kind of the same phrase over and over again, we're just counting down. So because we're repeating, we know we need a for loop, or we need some type of loop. We're going to start out with a 4. So you guys all had the 4. We're going to start out with a number. You initialize, or you begin, or have your starting number in the beginning of your for loop. And you can declare your variable inside the for loop, or you could have put int I equals 0 and then put I equals 99 inside the for loop as well. I normally, at least in the beginning, if I'm just starting, kind of like where do I start with my for loop, I usually start with my declaration inside the for loop. And that's something that's pretty common in all programming languages. So I use int I. Now you guys could use int d, int r, any type of variable for I. I know I'm starting at 99 because that's where we start. And then I'm saying I'm going to run through this loop as long as I is greater than 0. So this is the second part between the two semicolons is my test. I'm testing to see, is I still greater than 0? If it is, then I'm going to do whatever's inside the two curly brackets here. So the second part is always like your if, or your tester, your conditional, to see if it's still true, then you're going to do whatever's in the curly brackets. So just the beginning is your initializing or starting point. The second part is your test, just to see if something is true. And then if it is, you're going to continue. And then the third part is how you're going to increase or decrement your steps from I. Because we're going one at a time, I can use I minus minus because we're counting down. So that's how I knew to use I minus minus. Now you could have said I equals I minus 1, which means you're subtracting 1 from I every time. But this is just a shortened version of saying the same thing. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Okay, so some of you guys just printed it out. Just do a simple printout, which is great. So system at out, that print line. And I think all of you had some form of this, where you're like, hey, I just want to see if it prints out what I is, so I can just see if is it counting down. System, helps if I spell. And then you ran this. Oops. And I spelled print wrong, sorry. And I think all of you had some form of this, where you started with 99 and you worked your way all the way to 1. Now, if you wanted to go all the way to 0, there's 2 ways you could do this, but you could also have changed this I minus minus, and I think you could have done minus minus I, meaning, oh, it didn't change it. You could have done, you could have printed it out a little bit different. You could have changed where I is greater than 0. You could have said when I is equal to 0, you're going to keep going until I is equal to 0. So you could have played around with it if you wanted to go from 99 to actual 0. But that would have been up to you. I just wanted you guys to see the pattern. Now for printing this out, I wanted you guys to also think about, how do I incorporate I into a system printout sentence? So you could have put system printout, or sorry, system out print, and then you could have done your sentence. So we're gonna do like however many bottles of root beer, right? So you could have done I, which would give you the number, plus, and then in quotation marks, bottles of root beer. on the wall. I forget how it even goes. So you could have said blank bottles of root beer on the wall, and then I think it's, you could have done this again. I blank bottles of root beer. I'm using spaces of root beer. And then you could have then used another line. Out that print line. So we have blank bottles of root beer on the wall, blank bottles of root beer. You could have said, take one down. Pass it around. And then you could have said, take one down, pass it around, and then you could have come up with the next line for the number of bottles. And to do that, you could have just said I minus 1. So you could have said, take one down, pass it around, and then put plus I minus 1, which would have given us 98 bottles. And then do bottles of root beer on the wall. And then it would, so it would, in that last sentence, it would subtract 1 from that to kind of set you up for the next phrase of the song. So that's how, again, that's how you guys incorporate the number, that variable for I, and then incorporate the words. You use those, you use the plus sign because it combines the number and the sentence that you're inputting in there, or that you're creating. And you can keep doing that. So if I run this, and I'm going to make this bigger. Sorry, I know it's not very big. So again, we have our for loop, starts at 99, checks to see if it's greater than 0. If it is, it'll keep subtracting, and as it does, it goes through this loop. So it starts out with 99 bottles of root beer on the wall, 99 bottles of root beer. You take one down, pass it around, and then this I minus 1 is now going to be 98 bottles of root beer on the wall. And once that last system print line is done, it's now going to go back up to the beginning of the loop, and now I is going to be 98 because we subtracted 1 once it made it through that first pass through of that loop. So then it goes down to 98. Then it starts out back 98 bottles of root beer on the wall, 98 bottles of root beer. We take one down, pass it around, and then it's going to do 98 minus 1, which is 97 bottles of root beer on the wall. And then it comes back up to the beginning of this for loop, and now it starts at 97. And it keeps going until we get to 1. So if I run this, oops, I got an error. Oh, I forgot a semicolon. So guys, if you ever get an error, which I'm sure you will, because I get them all the time, see where it says main Java 8 error? It kind of will tell you in the general area where your error is. So if you haven't noticed that yet, 8 is the line, and it told me kind of like, hey, something about a semicolon, and it's just because I forgot a semicolon, which happens easily. Okay, so I'm going to run this again. And it looks like I got another one. Oh, I forgot a plus sign. I'm okay. There. The plus sign combines phrases and numbers in your system print line. Now, if you're adding two numbers in a, let's say, some type of calculation, it would add them. But because we're doing quotation marks, it knows you're not making a calculating addition. You're just adding the sentence or the phrase to this calculation here. So that's how it knows. Your computer knows that. Okay, I'm gonna run. Hopefully I don't have any errors. And I do. The first one is a string, the second one's a number. Where are we? I minus 1. Nope, it's not a string. Let me try putting it in quotation marks. I don't know why it's not subtracting it. Let's try that. There we go. The reason, guys, I was getting that error with I minus 1, for some reason I thought I was taking a sentence and trying to subtract 1 from it, which would be like, you know, a sentence and a number aren't the same. So I just put them in parentheses. So it told my program that it was actually a calculation and not anything else. So here we go. 99 bottles of root beer, 99 bottles of root beer. Take one down, pass it around. And then this is my subtraction, 98 bottles of root beer in the wall. And then it goes back. So this is the first pass through the for loop. And it keeps redoing. And yours doesn't like the parentheses?
No, it doesn't like the minus sign.
Put it in parentheses. See, mine didn't either. So see how on line 8, if I didn't have the parens around I minus 1, it didn't like mine either for some reason. Even though I've done this multiple times and I know.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Sometimes our program thinks it's smarter than us, and it probably is.
Sure.
Unfortunately, with programming, not unfortunately, but as you guys are learning, it's sometimes easier to, like, I'm really glad that you at least try to get I to subtract first, because it's important in programming to kind of just take it as baby steps. Let's first try doing that first, whatever our first task is. Like, what am I trying to accomplish? So as you're writing your program, you got to first ask, what am I first trying to accomplish? Okay, I'm trying to accomplish it counting down from 99 to 0. Okay, so let's at least get our program to print out 99 to 1. So that would be like your first task. And then you got to say, okay, now she wants us to like somehow print out this lyrics or this song. So then maybe you first do the first line where first it just prints out the number and then how many bottles are on the wall. And then you can just kind of go through and keep refining your program. And I really think that's the best way, just because it can get overwhelming. This was just 2 lines of code, or I mean, in terms of output. And it can take a while. So, you know, there's lots of mistakes that can be. As you could tell, I make mistakes all the time. I forget semicolon. I forget to use quotation marks. My program doesn't like it when I subtract a number inside while using text. So it's important to just really take it into baby steps. And you might have to problem solve along the way. So it's okay to struggle, and you probably are, and you probably will continue as you work the problem. Unfortunately as well, I mean, I think it's great, but sometimes it's tough. It's, you know, it's like math in terms of like, oh, there's a definite right answer. But unlike math, programming, there could be many different ways to write your code. So in that respect, it's more like English, where, you know, you can all write an essay in many different ways and still have great essays. So same with computer programming. You can all write different code in different ways, depending on how you think, how you process the information. And it can all be right. You can all have different answers. So, especially as we start doing more complex things, you probably will have different answers. I mean, if anything, you'll have different variables, I would guess, or different output or user input prompts. So, questions about this? Do you guys understand how to incorporate your numbers with your output, with your sentence output? Yeah? And how it's important to have that? So if I ask you guys to like reiterate or have some type of output, I will expect you guys to have like those sentences in there. So just a reminder, anything in quotation marks is basically like a string output. It's just instead of declaring a variable as a string, you're just brute forcing it out in that print line. And again, this didn't have any user input, so we didn't need our two libraries either. So that's the use of a simple for loop, just one level of a for loop. At some point, probably next week, we'll talk about nested for loops. But for now, this is just a basic for loop where we're counting down. We could have done one where we're counting up, starting at 0. And instead of taking one down, maybe we're adding one to the wall. And then we would count up. So there's, you can do different ways. You just got to ask yourself, what do I want my program to do? And then go from there. So it's very logical. If you haven't noticed, like math, programming is a very logical process. So if you're a mathy person, this might be a little bit easier for you. I don't know. Questions? All right, if you guys are done, hit submit, and you guys can submit this one. Or resubmit, because I know some of you, I sent it back to you. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are we awake today?
Not really.
No, I know, it's tough. It is tough.
There's over 100 growers, and there's about 40 mobile fooders.
There was
So it took forever. They did the field events in heats. That's how many people were there.
Wow.
It's like how normally running, how there's like different heats, but in normal field events, that's not true.
Okay.
So it took a while.
Okay, guys. Do you guys have Caleb, do you guys have another track meet this week?
Well, there's one today, but let me check the schedule.
Okay. I'm distracted.
There probably is.
Okay. You guys have so many at the very end, I know.
Yeah, like 2 back-to-back ones.
Yeah. Okay, guys, how about we go to the practice option, and we'll work on that together. Because I don't think anyone's gotten to that one. So can you guys go to 9, and it says practice option? At least nobody's handed one in.
True.
True.
Okay.
All right, so
Saturday.
it's okay. I know I figured some of you maybe haven't even gotten to it, or you read it and go, oh, I'll just wait for Miss Bauman to help explain. Or, you're trying it, and we're just going to walk through it. So if you have some of the code down, just kind of double check or ask questions so you can stop me. And as always, guys, if I'm going too fast or if I'm not making any sense, just let me know. You might really have to say, wait, because I can't always hear you very well, but I can do that. No point in going really fast through this stuff if you're completely lost. So, okay, so for this, we had to write a menu program that lets the user select from a list of options. So at least 3. And if the input is not one of the options, it's going to keep reprinting the list. Now, I can't remember if I on here showed you a picture. No. I know in Schoology, I had 2 pictures that were just examples of what it could look like. And I'm surprised they didn't show up here. Sorry. So there's 2 pictures, and let me pull them up so that you guys can at least see what they look like here. I gave you 2 sample outputs that you could have. So this one at the very top, if you can see it, where you're just asking a simple, hey, make a selection between 1 through 4. And if you pick 8, it keeps asking you, make a selection through 1 through 4. If you picked 10, it would keep repeating that until you picked 1 through 4. And then you could have some type of output that said, yay, thanks for your selection. So that's pretty simple. It's not really a list. It's just saying make a selection between 1 and 4. Now, if you wanted to get fancier, you could have done something where you had like, hey, what is your favorite food? 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 options, 1, 2, or 3, and then enter your food choice. And then if you picked, like let's say number 6, it would say invalid selection, please choose 1, 2, or 3, and it would repeat the selections and ask for you to enter a food choice. So both of them are correct. One is clearly a little bit more cryptic or simpler, where it doesn't tell you what the selections are for. And the other one tells you a little bit more information. Now, I wanted to show you guys both because as we start going through developing our skills, clearly at some point you might want to have some type of list or option selection for your user to have. Because the first one is so basic, I don't know when you would ever say, hey, make a selection 1 through 4 and not tell the user what 1 through 4 means. Unless your user's a mind reader. You know, like if you guys were creating some type of game, I would guess, like if you were playing some type of game, you kind of would want to know what 1 through 4 was giving you. So I wanted to show you kind of both of those options. And we can run through both of them. But we can at least start out with the basic today. Questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to go back to 9 option list here. And what are some things we know? We know what's the first thing we usually have at the top? We have our our input output. Because we know we're going to have user input, correct? Guys? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we need to have that. So we need our 2 imports. So that's, because we know we're having user input, that should be the first thing that comes to mind. We are having user input, meaning the person, whoever's reading our program when we run it, will be inputting information. So always have your import, java.io, and import java.util. Anything, that should have been your first indication. Next, we need our public class main. And then our curly bracket, and then our public static void main string args. All right. Basic setup. Perfect. Do we at least have that?
Please stop. I don't want to be.
So if we first have this, guys, let's look at our assignment again. Our assignment says that we want to write a menu program that lets the user select from a list of options, at least 3. And if the input is not one of the options, it keeps reprinting. So my hint said to do a do while. And the reason why I picked a do while is because I at least want those options to be available to my user at least once, right? I want my user to at least see the options. So if they all of a sudden pick one of the options, it would quit. But at least they see it at least once. So that do while means it's going to at least do the option list one time while given the options of 1, 2, or 3, or whatever our options are. So that's why we would pick a do while. And it's, as we start doing these, as you start thinking about how you want to program, you might try to do a loop, and you might pick a for loop first and then realize that's probably not appropriate, and think about maybe I need to do a while, or maybe I need to do a do while. So the do while is nice because at least it shows it once before it makes a determination if it ends the program or if it continues. So that's why a do while is really nice. So we're going to do a do while, as I said in there. So do, curly bracket, and then I'm just going to skip down to where it gives me a closing curly bracket. So I should have 3 closing curly brackets. For my purpose, you guys don't need to do this, but I like to kind of just tell what things are doing. So my very last curly bracket of my program is for the class. So I'm going to say closes class. And then the second to last one closes the main. So that way I know I at least need these last 2 curly brackets. And then that third closing curly bracket is for my do while. So I have my do at the top, I have my opening curly bracket, it gives me some white space, and then it drops a line, gives me a closing curly bracket, and then I need my do while. And then I'm going to have some type of test. I'm going to test to see if something is one of the options that I have. So like I said, we can do a very simple option. You guys, is it okay if we do like, hey, select between 1 through 4? Or 1 through 3, 1, 2, or 3?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. So at some point we're gonna prompt our user to say, hey, select between 1, 2, or 3. So in fact, we can do that now. So I keep my do while. I'm not gonna finish this while until I have my system printing out and I know exactly what I'm asking my user. So we'll come back to that. So inside the do while, I want to print out something where it's prompting my user. So I'm going to use a system that print line. And again, we decided we're just going to prompt our user, say, make a selection or pick a number between from 1, 2, or 3. From 1 through 3, right? So that's prompting my user to pick a number from 1, 2, or 3. Or you could even write it out, like pick a number 1, 2, or 3. You could write it out. You could make it something simple like this. It's really up to you what you want your user to do. But like you guys know, from playing games or using technology, sometimes it's easier to help the user out and be as specific as you want. So that way there's no mistake of what you want the user to input. So this is asking my user to pick a number from 1 to 3. And then once we ask our user to input a number, or we could say input a number instead of pick a number 1 through 3. we need to what? Input that number, correct? Yes. So if we're gonna input a number, we need to have some scanner stuff. Okay, and you can put your scanner in your do while, or you can put it out. It's up to you. You guys want to have it inside or out? This is a tough call. Out. Okay. Sure. So I'm going to put my scanner information where you're declaring the scanner. Basically, you're saying, hey, I need to declare something so that way my program can read it in. So I'm going to use scanner. It's going to be out of the do while, but it still needs to be in your main, your public static void main. So scanner. Remember, we're declaring a scanner variable, so you can use any word. I'm going to use my input, my good old standard my input, equals new scanner, and then system.in. So that's basically saying I am declaring a variable called my input, and that variable is going to read in the line. So I now need to go back to my do while, and after the line that I'm prompting the user to pick a number, that's where I need to indicate I have to read in that input. Okay. And in order to read in the input, maybe I also have a number, correct? It's going to be an integer. Do you guys want it to be an int or a double?
Int.
Okay. So I'm going to declare a variable int. And maybe I say option. So my integer variable called option is now going to be assigned to my reading in of the input. So my input at, and we said it was an integer, so next int. So again, if we're asking our user to input a number, the very next line has to be, hey, let's read it in. And that's what my input next int means. It's reading it in. It's reading in the next integer that's available. And now it's assigning it to this variable called option. Okay. So we asked our user, pick a number from 1 through 3. We're reading it in, whatever number they chose, and we're assigning it to the word option, or we're assigning it to the variable called option. Now, according to our program, we want this to keep asking until what?
1, 2, or 3. Until I pick number 1, 2.
Until they pick 1, 2, or 3, right? And then if they pick 1, 2, or 3, if they pick 1, 2, or 3, it stops, correct? Yep. Okay. So we're going to go to our while, because inside that is going to be our test. We're going to keep prompting while it's not 1, 2, or 3. So we're going to say, hey, make a selection between 1, 2, or 3 while option is not equal to 1. Okay. And the option is not equal to 2. And option is not equal to 3. Because if it was equal to 1, if it was equal to 2, or if it was equal to 3, it wouldn't keep prompting. And because this while is at the end and it needs to be executed, we need it to read that in. We need a semicolon at the end.
You're getting lots of errors on this option.
That's okay. Let's take a look. I know we are going to. So let's run this, and I think we should get some errors here. So I've got 3 errors, and it tells me whoever just said that said, hey, we're getting errors with option. It can't find that symbol for option. And that is because we declared int option inside the do while. Because we're running it at least once and we're doing this check, we need to kind of make that variable option more of a universal variable. So I'm going to go back into my do while. I'm going to not declare it there. I'm going to use it, but I'm not going to declare it inside my do while, but I'm going to declare it outside of my do while. So I'm going to do int option, and you can say it equals 0 right now. You can set it to something. You don't have to. You could just have int option semicolon. Either one works. We just have to declare it outside of that do while. It's having a problem with that. So hopefully that solves that problem. Let's run. And it asks us, pick a number between 1 through 3. Let's pick not a number 1 through 3. Let's pick 10. It should prompt us again. Yep. I pick 100. It should prompt us again. If I pick 1, it should end. And it does. And you can run it again to say, hey, will it work for all 3 options? So if I pick 2, will it end? Yep. And if I run it again, if I pick 3, will it end? Yep. So I know it works. I've done my check, and that's important. It's important to check your work. Do all the possible options. So we know that if it picks 1, 2, or 3, it should stop. It shouldn't prompt you anymore. But we know if it doesn't pick 1, 2, or 3, it should keep asking you to pick a number. Does that make sense? This do while means it at least prompts you once, and then it checks if that option is a 1, 2, and 3. If it's a 1, 2, or 3, then it's going to stop. It means it's not even going to ask you again because it already picked up one of the options given. But if it doesn't meet this condition, then it's going to do it again. So it's important to know kind of like what your program is at, or what's being asked, and if your program is answering that question. Okay. Now, something that you can add to this, guys. So once we pick the right number, you could then say, hey, you chose what option they chose. So you could say, after your do while, you could say, but before you end the program, you could have a system out. System.out.print line. And you could say, good choice. You chose option, and then do a plus sign and tell them what option they chose, and just type in the word option because that's their input. And then semicolon. So this basically saying is it's going to keep prompting the user to pick a choice between 1 through 3. Once it picks 1, 2, or 3, it's now going to print out, good choice. You chose the option. And it's going to tell the user what option they chose.
Can we not make it so that they tell you like what food exactly it is?
Do you guys want to make it more advanced? Yeah, we can do that.
I was just wondering. How you do that.
Yep. So let me quick
What's
do
up?
this. I'm going to quick run this. And then show you guys. So if I pick like option 1 here, it says good choice, you chose option 1. Perfect. Okay. So that's your basic. I mean, it doesn't seem basic, but it is actually pretty basic. You're doing your check all in that while loop. Okay. All right. So next, the question is, how do we make some choices? So if you guys want, you can take a screenshot of this. It's up to you. I can put this, let me make a note and I'll put it in our notes as well. Nope. In folder 8 and folder 8, 9. And I'll call it option list basic. And then I'll also do the next one as well. But okay, so next request was, how do we do something a little bit more advanced where we have different options? All right, so same thing. We have user input. But now we want there to be different options. We want to see something. And maybe we say, hey, if you pick the option 0, it's going to literally end the program. So, for example, and maybe we don't do food. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys want to do food or do you want different options? Food? All right, we'll do. I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Food is easy, so.
Food is.
Or you can do like your favorite like.
Okay, well, you could do an athlete, yeah, like sports or games or favorite day of the week. Either one. We're going to still start out with do. We're still going to have a scanner because we got to read in user input. We can do option. We can still keep that in option because we're going to have a selection between 1 through 3 or 1 through whatever we choose. But our prompting is going to be a little different. Maybe now we want to tell our user what the options are, so that way they know. So you guys can do as many system outprints as you want. Maybe at first you want to tell them, your user, I'm going to get rid of this while for a second, guys. You might tell your user, and I'm going to get rid of this here. You might tell your user, this is a food option. And then maybe I have another line that says system.out.println. And then it gives the food options. So it might say, please pick your favorite food. And then I have a colon. And maybe I even drop down another line. And then this is where I have my options. System. Out.print line. And maybe I say, hey, 1 is, give me a food. Pizza. System. Out.print. If you guys are copy and pasters, that's okay. If you don't want to print all this stuff out or type all this stuff. Maybe 2 is, give me another option. I'm sorry, what? State. Wow, high-end stuff. And system at out.print line, and then give me 1 more.
Good tacos.
What was it? Tacos? No. Say it one more time.
Chimichangas.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me write that. Chimichang. That's so wrong. Us.
Oh,
You know what I mean. Okay, so pick your favorite food. 1, 2, or 3. Steak, chimichangas, blah blah blah. And then you might say, maybe you want this to go until, and then you might say system out print line. You might say, sorry, you might say you're going to do this until, you could say you can do this until the user picks 0, where basically you keep asking them the question until they pick 0 to end the program. Or you could say until they pick 1, 2, or 3. Either one works. Now, if you were saying, hey, let's say you were doing a tally of some sort, you maybe still want to kind of keep this going until they pick 0. So that way, like if I gave this to all of you guys or set my computer up, I'd want to do a tally like of pizza, steak, and chimichangas. So I would have this keep running over and over and over until I want to exit the program until it picks 0. But it doesn't matter. We can do it either way, but at least we have our 3 options, and we're going to read it in. So I have system output or outprint. It's going to ask, or it's going to show my user to pick their favorite food, 1, 2, or 3. And then I'm going to read in this option. The option is the next int. So they have to pick a number, 1, 2, or 3. And it's going to read it in and assign it to my word option or my variable called option. Now, you might say, maybe you have an if statement that says if, this is a little bit more advanced, so you might say if maybe option is equivalent to 1, maybe you want it to say something. So you could say, if it's equivalent to 1, you might say yum. Or something to say that, hey, you picked pizza. So you might say yum. I love pizza. I don't know. And maybe if it picks something else, if it picks, else if option if it's option 2, maybe you have it print something else out, like system out print line. Wow. Steak. You have good taste. Maybe you don't. I don't know. And then you might have another one for else if it picks option 3. If you want, this, you can have it comment on your options. 3, you might have it then say system out print. And what was, I'm hungry. That sounds good. So if it, this not only reads in the input, but then it gives some kind of an inner test to say, hey, if you pick option 1, you're going to talk about pizza. If it picks option 2, you're going to talk about steak. If it picks option 3, that sounds good. And maybe if it doesn't pick 1, 2, or 3, you guys might also have it say something like, hey, invalid option. So that last check, so we said if it picked 1, 2, or 3, you're going to output something. But that last one, you might say else if it doesn't pick 1, 2, or 3. Else, you might have it say system.out.print line invalid. Selection, pick 1, 2. Oops, sorry, I put too many curly brackets. So right now, we're just saying, hey, before we even check to see if it's picking 1, 2, or 3, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to print out food option. Please pick your favorite food. 1, 2, or 3. Okay. The option, it's going to read in the number. If that option, if the person picks 1, it's going to print out, yum, I love pizza too. Else, it's going to pick, if you pick 2, else if it picks 2, you're going to pick, wow, I love steak. Then it's going to check, did you pick 3? If you pick 3, I'm hungry, that sounds good. And then this final else is going to say, well, if you didn't pick 1, 2, or 3, it's going to do a system outprint, invalid selection, pick 1, 2, or 3. And then we want it to keep doing this every single time. Or keep prompting the user as long as they're not picking 1, 2, or 3. So in this do while, for this while, we now have to say the same thing like we did in the other program. We're going to do this while option is not equal to 1 and option is not equal to 2 and option is not equal to 3. And you're probably thinking, wait a minute, if we wanted them to pick 1, 2, or 3, we're going to output. It will still do that first before it does this final check because we have a do while. So at first it's going to do this stuff and then it's going to check later if it's 1, 2, or 3. So this gets a little bit more advanced. So that's where a do while works really nice because you can have it outprint some stuff before it actually would jump out of that loop. Oh, all right, guys. Sorry, we ran out of time. So we'll finish this tomorrow, okay? We'll finish this tomorrow, and yeah, we'll finish this tomorrow, and then we'll talk about some other things with our looping, okay?
Great.
I will keep this though. We'll continue with the same thing. All right, have a good one, guys.
You too.
Okay. Boy, time went fast.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.